Okay, so we've got a test coming up. It's going to be the second chapter 1 test and the first chapter 2 test. We're going to go over the practice test right now and make sure we're ready to go. So we'll start with solving equations. Number 1. All right, so I want to get this x by itself. So I'm going to get rid of the plus 9 first. We'll do minus 9 on both sides of the equation. Those will cancel. I'll have negative 6x equals negative 27 minus 9 is negative 36. All right, I need to get rid of that negative 6 that's on the x. It's multiplying, so I'll divide on both sides by negative 6. And that gets x by itself. Negative 36 divided by negative 6 would be positive 6. Since this problem is worth so many points, it might be a good idea to check our answer. And checking is pretty quick to do. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite my original equation. Negative 6x plus 9 equals negative 27, but I left out the x. And in place of the x, I'm going to put the 6 that I think is the correct answer. And then we'll just simplify and see if we get the same number on both sides. So if I do negative 6 times positive 6, that's negative 36. And if I put negative 36 and positive 9 together, I get negative 27. I've got the same number on both sides of my equation. That means my answer is correct. So we're going with 6. All right, on to part B. In this one, we have two x's on one side of our equation, two terms with x's. We want to combine those two things together before we start solving. So negative 7x plus 3x gets us negative 4x's. We would still have our minus 9, bring down the equal sign and the 15. All right, now we just have an x in one place, so we can go ahead and start solving. We'll get rid of this minus 9 first. We'll go plus 9 on both sides. That leaves us with negative 4x and 24 over here. And then we can divide. The negative 4 is multiplying by the x. We'll divide by negative 4 on both sides. It's going to cancel. That leaves me with x equals 24 divided by negative 4 would be negative 6. Again, since this is worth points, I'm going to go ahead and check. So I'm going to rewrite my original equation. Negative 7x minus 9 plus 3x equals 15. But I left out all my x's. I'll go ahead and put my answer in where those x's were. Negative 6 goes in both spots where the x's were. And then we'll just go ahead and simplify. And since this is getting kind of complicated, I'm going to use my calculator. So negative 7 times negative 6 plus 3 times negative 6. So I just, I forgot my minus 9. Okay, minus 9 plus 3 times negative 6. Let me double check and make sure I've typed that in correctly. Yep, okay, so we'll just put that all on the calculator one time. It comes out to 15. The other side is also 15. If I have the same number on both sides of the equation, that means my answer is correct. So negative 6. Part C. This equation has x's on both sides of the equation. We can't solve an equation that has x's in two different places. So let's start by getting rid of either the negative 2x or the positive 3x. I'm going to choose to get rid of this minus 2x. I'm just going to do plus 2x on both sides of the equation. Those go away. I've got an 8 equals 2x plus 3x is 5x. I still have my minus 17 over here. All right, now I just have x in one place, so I'll work to get it by itself. Let's start by getting rid of this minus 17. I'm going to do plus 17 on both sides. That's going to cancel. 8 plus 17 is 25. We still have our 5x. All right, let's go ahead and divide on both sides by 5. Here we've got just x. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So I think my answer is 5, but I'm going to go ahead and check. Got lots of space for this one. So let me rewrite my equation. I'm going to leave out all my x's, though. 8 minus 2x equals 3x minus 17. That's the same equation that we started with. Just left my x's out. Go ahead and put that 5 in here and here. And let's simplify both sides of this and see what we get. We'll do this one with our brains. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, so I still have this 8 here. And 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Simplify this side. 3 times 5 is 15. I still have my minus 17. 15 minus 17, that's also negative 2. So that works. That means that 5 is indeed my solution. Right, we will move on to number 2 now. And this one, we're evaluating expressions, and we need to use the values that they give us here. We are asked to show work, so we're going to show our steps as we do it. So what we're going to do for our work here is I'm going to copy this expression down, but any place I see a variable, I'm going to leave a blank parentheses. So 4a minus b. And in place of the a and the b, I'm going to put the correct number. So the value of a is 5, so we'll put the 5 where the a used to be. The value of b is negative 3, so we'll put that where the b was. And then we just need to simplify this. So what I got here is 4 times 5, which is 20. And this is minus a negative 3. Minus a negative is the same as plus. So 20 plus 3, which of course is 23. Put that in our blank there. All right. Part B. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. I'm leaving out the a and the c. Some blank parentheses there. And let's put some values in for a and c. A was 5 and c was negative 6. And let's work to simplify that. Now these parentheses aren't doing anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of them. I have plus a negative 6. Plus a negative is the same as a minus. And those are still inside the absolute value. Now we can't do the absolute value to these numbers yet. We've got to get them down to a single number. We need to simplify inside of here first. So what is 5 minus 6? That is negative 1. And now that we've simplified that to a single number, we can do the absolute value on it. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1. And that will be our answer. Right, part C. We've got the square root of 43 minus c. And c is negative 6. All right, let's simplify this. The square root of 43 minus a negative 6 would be like plus 6. 43 plus 6 is 49. Square root of 49. I'm thinking of a number that multiplies times itself to equal 49. The number is 7. Last one for number 2. Let's rewrite this expression. B squared minus 4 times A times C. And we are going to put in the values. So let's make sure we get everything in the right place. B comes first, that was negative 3. And then A goes in this spot, A was 5. And C goes in this spot, C was negative 6. All right, let's simplify this thing. Negative 3 squared, that's negative 3 times negative 3, which is 9. Now I have three numbers that I need to multiply together here. I'm just going to do it 2 at a time. So I'm going to start by multiplying the negative 4 times the 5. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. I still have this negative 6 hanging out there, waiting to get multiplied. We'll do that in the next step. So we still have our 9. We need to do multiplication first, though. Negative 20 times negative 6 is positive 120. And we can add those together to get 129. Okay, moving on to problem 3. All right, in problem 3, we are going to describe this graph. So the graph is given to us. We want to list as many features as we can about this graph. So let's get started with that. So what do I notice? I notice some x-intercepts here and here. I have an x-intercept at negative 1, 0, and at positive 3, 0. I have a y-intercept right here. And that is at 0, negative 3. This point right here is called the vertex. And it is at 1, negative 4. What about max and min? There is a minimum point. It's at that same vertex point. So the minimum happens at the point 1, negative 4. And I would say for this graph, there is no maximum. It keeps going up forever and ever and ever. So I'm going to write no max. Some people might write that as the maximum is infinity. That's really the same idea, just a different way to say the same thing. There is a line of symmetry on this graph. That would be this line right here. And let's write the equation of that line. It's a vertical line, so it's going to be x equals, and the x value of every point on that line is 1. Let's talk about the shape of this graph. This is a parabola. Another name for that would be a quadratic. All right, I think we've listed all the important features. Let's go ahead and do the domain and the range. So with domain, we're going to give how far it goes to the left and how far it goes to the right. So this graph, how far does it go to the left? The x values as we go to the left. Now this arrow says it's going to keep going to the left forever. So it goes all the way to negative infinity on the left. And infinity is always going to parenthesis. How far does the graph go on the right? Looking at x values here, I don't know, the arrow says it's going to go all the way to positive infinity on the right. Infinity is always going to parenthesis. All right, we'll do the same thing with range, but the range are going to be my y values. Domain is x values, range is y values. And instead of left to right, we go bottom to top. So how far does the graph go on the bottom, or how far down does it go? Now this graph only goes down to negative 4. It doesn't go below that. So negative 4 on the bottom. Since that point is on the graph, we'll give it a square bracket. And then how far does the graph go on the top? How far up does it go? That arrow shows us that it's going to go up to infinity. All right, there's number 3. Moving on to 4. So we're going to complete a table and draw a graph for this function. So we've got a lot of points to do here. Essentially what I need to do is for each of these points, I need to plug that x value in for both of the x's in the equation. and come up with a y value. So for -3, I'm going to take my equation here. I'm rewriting it, but leaving out all the x's. In place of the x's, we will put -3. And then I just need to work this out. I could do it in my head. I could do it in my calculator. I'm going to go ahead and work it out in my head. That's 9. -3 times -3 is 9. And then 2 times -3 is -6, and -1. And 9 minus 6 minus 1. Let's see, 9 minus 6 is 3, minus 1 is 2. So -3 comma 2 is going to be on our graph. So this is going to be a pretty tedious process because we're going to have to go through and do that for each point. So I'm going to make this a little bit easier by just setting it up ahead of time. So I'm just rewriting my equation, but leaving the x's out. And I'm just going to do this for each of my points because it looks the same for all of them. And then we're just going to, for each of these, we will put in the x value. So this time we're doing -2. And this time I think I'll use my calculator. I'll make this a little faster. So parentheses are very important. Make sure you're using them if you're using your calculator. Check that I typed it in correctly. It's good. So here's -1. And then we'll just keep going through. This time I'm going to do -1. So again, using my calculator. Gives me a value of -2. Then I'm going to plug in 0. I can do this one in my head because 0 squared is 0, and 2 times 0 is also 0. So the only thing that's going to be there is a -1. We'll do 1. This one I can pull off my head too. 1 squared is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3, minus 1 is 2. Put in 2. 2 squared is 4. 2 times 2 is also 4. So I got 4 plus 4 minus 1. 4 plus 4 is 8. Minus 1 is 7. And then finally putting in 3. 3 squared is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. 9 plus 6 minus 1. 9 plus 6 is 15. Minus 1 is 14. All right, it's time to graph this thing. It has an x squared, so I know I'm going to be graphing a parabola. It should be that U-shaped graph. Let's double check to make sure that works. So remember the x comes first along the x-axis. -3, comma 2 would be here. -2, comma -1 would be here. -1, comma -2 is here. 0, comma -1. 1, comma 2. 2, comma 7 is going to be off our graph up here someplace. And 3 comma 14 is going to be way off the graph. So we've got enough here to see that parabola shaping up. So we'll connect these up with a smooth curve. Get some arrowheads on there to show that it's going forever and ever. And there's number 4. Moving on to number 5. So now we're getting into the new material. This is from chapter 2. All right, first problem. We just need to find the slope. Well, there it is. The slope is -8. Okay, second problem. We just need to write what type of slope we're looking at in each of these. So I'm going to start with the positive and negative because they're the easiest to spot. Those are the ones that are going to be on a diagonal. Positive slopes are the ones that are going uphill as you go from left to right. This one has a positive slope. Negative slopes are ones that you are going downhill from left to right. This one is a negative slope. Now, horizontal and vertical lines have special slopes. Horizontal lines, flat lines, have 0 slope. where vertical lines have slopes that are undefined. All right, so positives and negatives, 0 and undefined. In part C, we're actually going to find some slopes. And I always check first to see if it's a positive or a negative slope. This one's going uphill from left to right, so this is a positive slope. To find my slope, I'm going to pick a couple points. They were kind enough to give me a couple points. I didn't have to use these ones, but I'll go ahead since they're here. And let's count my rise over run. My change in y is 2. My change in x is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my slope is going to be, remember, it's change in y over change in x. I just almost did it backwards. Change in y is 2, change in x is 6. And I believe we can simplify that. We can divide both of those numbers by 2. So dividing by 2, numerator and denominator, gets me 1 over 3. And we said it was positive, so my slope is 1 over 3. All right, this slope, as I go from left to right, we're definitely going downhill. So I'll keep in mind this is a negative slope. I'm going to go ahead and put my minus sign here now so I don't forget it. Let's do another slope triangle here. We'll use the 2 points they gave us, but we can use any 2 points. My change in y is 1, 2, 3, 4. My change in x is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know my slope is going to be negative, and it's rise over run, or change in y over change in x, 4 over 6. Again, we can simplify this by dividing by 2 in the top and bottom. That's going to get us 2 and 3. So my final slope is negative 2 over 3. All right, moving right along. We're going to find the slope from the table here. So all I need to do is pick a couple points. Any 2 points will do. I kind of like these two because everything's positive or 0. So I'm going to go with those. Let's find our change in y and our change in x. So this would be my change in x. And it is, let's see, from a 2 to a 3, I'm doing +1. This would be my change in y. From a 0 to a 6, I'm doing +6. To find my slope then, I just do change in y over change in x. For us, that would be change in y is 6, change in x is 1. So my final slope would be 6. 6 over 1 is 6. All right. Part E, we're finding a slope between 2 points. When I do this, I like to stack them on top of each other. So I'm going to rewrite them. This kind of makes it look like the table that we were just working with. And we're essentially going to do the same thing that we just did. We'll find our change in x and our change in y. Remember, this is x and this is y. So let's look at our change in x first. So I need to get from a -8 to a +7. I believe that's +15. I can double check with my calculator. -8 plus 15 is, oops, there we go, 7. The other way I can find this, if you're using a calculator, you can always do the second number minus the first number. So I could have found that 15 by going 7 minus -8. In fact, that's what I'm going to do for my change in y here. I'm going from 49 to 24. I know it's going to be negative. Let's just do the second number minus the first number. So 24 minus 49 gets us -25. All right, so that makes my slope. Remember, it's change in y over change in x. So -25 over 15. We can divide both of those by 5, and that's going to get us negative, let's see, 5 over 3. On to number 6. All right, we need to find a slope and a y-intercept, and then write an equation. So let's start with slope. To find the slope, I just need to pick a couple points and find my change in x and change in y. My change in x is 1. My change in y is minus. To go from a 24 to a 12, I do minus 12. 24 minus 12 is 12, yes. So my slope is going to be change in y over change in x. So negative 12 over 1, which is just negative 12. Y-intercept is going to be the y value when x is equal to 0. So that's pretty easy to spot in this table. So my y-intercept is going to be 36. Now I just need to write the equation. So it's y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. So y equals negative 12x, and b is the y-intercept, plus 36 for my final equation. Part B, we're asked to graph the equation. So I need two pieces of information. I need a starting value or a y-intercept. My y-intercept is at negative 1. So on the y-axis, I'm going to draw my first point at negative 1. And then from there, I'm going to draw more points using my slope. And my slope is negative 3 over 2. I know it's a negative slope, so it's going to be going downhill. I'm going to draw my downhill or negative slope triangle. And it's rise over run. Change in y is 3, change in x is 2. So I'm going to be going down 3 and over 2. So starting at my y-intercept here, I'm going to count down 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and over 2, 1, 2, and that will give me a new point. And I'll continue in that pattern, counting down 3 and over 2 until I run off the edge of the graph, and then I'll come back and go in the opposite direction, up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2. Finally, I can grab my ruler. Make sure you draw your line from edge to edge, and don't forget those arrowheads, because this line would go on forever and ever. All right, part C. Find the slope and the y-intercept and write an equation. All right, let's start with slope. I just need to find myself a couple points. I like that one. This is a good point too. So here's my slope triangle. And let me think about positive or negative as I go from left to right. My y-intercept is just where the graph crosses the y-axis. And the y-axis is here. The graph is crossing it here at negative 6. Now it's time for my equation. Y equals, the slope was negative 3x, and my y-intercept was negative 6. All right, our last problem for number 6 is a word problem. She has started her classic 8-bit game collection this month with 7 games. So let's underline the important numbers here. I see the number 8. I see 7 games. She plans on buying 2 games every 3 months. Help Gia by writing an equation she can use to predict how many games she will have in the future. All right, so it seems like this equation is about games. And this is going to be a linear situation because we've got a starting value and we're changing by the same amount. So let's go ahead and start writing our equation. Y equals, since this problem is about games, the y, that's going to be our dependent variable, is going to be number of games. All right, so I know my equation is going to have a format that's going to have something here, and then x, and then something over here. I just need a change value and a starting value. So let's see if we can find some numbers. There's actually 4 numbers here. 8-bit is just a style of video games from way, way back in the day when I was a kid. Kind of pixely, and anyways, that actually has nothing to do with the problem. This month she has 7 games. So I think that's our starting value. So let's go ahead and put that at the end. It's a positive 7, so we'll go plus 7 here. And we just need our change. So she's buying 2 games every 3 months. We can change that into a fraction, 2 over 3. And that's going to be our change, 2 over 3. So y equals 2 over 3x plus 7. X is going to be our independent variable. That's the thing that the number of games depends on. And in this case, it depends on how many months go by. Okay, moving on to number 7 in our last problem, practice test. All right, it says given the y-intercept of 6 and a slope of 8, write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So all we need to do is figure out what m and b are. And we know one of those things. The slope is 8. That's m. And actually, we know the other one because the y-intercept is b. So since the y-intercept is -6, then we've got b also. So this is going to be a pretty simple problem. We're just going to write down our answer. Y equals m was 8, x, and y-intercept -6, so 8x minus 6. And we're done. All right, part B also wants an answer in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Let's see what we can write for this problem, or what we have for this problem. We need m and b. We got a slope of -5. Okay, there's my m. I don't have b though, because this is not a y-intercept. What it is a point, and it gives us a value for x and a value for y. So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to go ahead and write down my equation. And then I'm going to fill in the values for all of the variables that I have numbers for. So y is 36, equals m is -5, x is 10, and b I don't know, so I'll just leave it as plus b. M and x we're multiplying here, so I need to make sure it's clear that's what's happening with these numbers. So I'll put the 10 in parentheses so we know we're multiplying. Great, let's solve that equation, and then we'll know what b is. I can simplify this. I know what -5 times 10 is. It's -50. We would still have the 36 over here. And then I can get rid of that -50 and get b by itself by doing +50 on both sides. 36 plus 50 is 86. So I've got b and I've got m. I'm ready to write my equation. So y equals m x plus b. The last one here. Here's that slope-intercept form again. So we're looking for y equals mx plus b. What'd they give us this time around? Oh my, they gave us nothing. We got no m, we got no b. We're going to have to find both of them, folks. That's all right, we got this. I'm going to start by finding my slope, and we know how to find slope from 2 points. When I do it, I like to stack the points on top of each other. It kind of creates a little table. And I'm going to use those two values to find my change in x and my change in y. So change in x is from 20 down to negative 35. Remember, you can always use your calculator to do the second number minus the first, but it's definitely subtraction, ends up being minus 55. From 12 to 45, if you need to use your calculator, do the second minus the first. 45 minus 12 is 33. So that's a plus 33 for the change in y, a minus 55 for the change in x. That means my slope is change in y over a change in x. And we can simplify that. Both of those numbers are divisible by 11. My final slope is going to be negative. If I divide by 11, we'll get 3 over 5. All right, so we have our slope as negative 3 over 5. We just need to find b. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my y equals mx plus b equation again, and I'm going to fill in numbers for m and x and y. I know what m is. It's negative 3 over 5. For x and y, I'm going to choose one of my 2 points. Now you can choose either one of these. You'll get the same answer, but you need to be consistent. You can't do the x from this point and the y from this point. You've got to do the x and the y from the same point. So these numbers are a little bit smaller and there's no negatives, so I'm going to choose those. But again, you could use the other point if you wanted to. All right, so y would go here, that's 12. X goes after the slope, that's 20. And then we'll just bring down our equals and our plus b. And we are multiplying here. So let's solve this. We need to multiply negative 3/5 times 20. Your calculator will take care of that. You can also do it in your head. I'll show you how to do it on the calculator first. So negative 3/5, we're just going to type it in as negative 3 divided by 5. There's my negative 3/5 times 20 is negative 12. I can also do this in my head. For those of you who are good at mental math, remember when you multiply by a fraction, you're really doing two things. You're multiplying by the number in the top and you're dividing by the number in the bottom. And you can do those things in any order you want. So I would think about this in my head as I'm going to take 20. I'm going to divide it by 5 first. 20 divided by 5 is 4. And then I'm going to multiply it by 3. So 20 divided by 5 gets me 4. Multiplied by 3 gets me 12. And it would be negative 12. However you choose to get there, let's bring down the rest of our equation, finish solving this. We want to get that b alone, so we know what b is. So let's get rid of the minus 12. We'll do plus 12 on both sides. That's going to get us 24 for b. All right, so I've got m, I've got b. Y equals negative 3 over 5x plus 24. All right, thank you so much for your attention. Good luck on your tests.